endowed with a genius for traitor making, noted the civil servant John William Kay, of colonial India's greatest spy. From 1831 to 1857, Mohanlal Zucchi had helped shape the empire he served. He fed false information to the court of the Prince of Persia not to strike across the Indus into India. He built networks of secret information across Central Asia. He warned the British that the Afghan War of 1842 was headed to disaster, and when that disaster happened, he rescued British prisoners headed for the slave markets of Turkestan. Then in 1877, Zucchi, Aga Hassan Jan to some, Mirza Quli Kashmiri others called him, passed away at his home on the fringes of Delhi at what's now Azadpur Mandi, ending a long retirement which was financed by dowries raised from his 17 wives. Ill of temper, ill of health, Zucchi fumed in his diary in his last years. These are caused by injustice. And what was that injustice? His masters never paid the bills for his epic Afghan achievements. And the great spy, possibly one of the world's greatest, died in penury. As India's intelligence and police services contemplate next week's budget, at least some of them are entitled to feel similar irritation, just like Mohanlal Zucchi. For years now, expenditure on internal security institutions has been stagnant. Last year's budget gave the Intelligence Bureau just some 83.5 crore rupees for capital expenditure out of an overall outlay of some 2,500 crores. Forensic science, the backbone of modern investigation, was given just 15.5 crore of capital expenditure. 21.69 crore was provided for central support for police training. Funding for the Research and Analysis Wing, India's external intelligence service, isn't made public, but insiders say the organization is also stressed. Demands for quality intelligence on China's military and policies has surged in the wake of the crisis on the line of actual control, and the organization has had to swivel resources away from long-standing covert programs in regions like Afghanistan and Iran. Even modernization of the obsolescent hardware holding up the National Criminal Database, which is called CCTNS, the keystone of modernization of policing, is slowing. Last year, it received some 668.5 crores. The year before, it was 784 crores. And the year before that, it was 939 crores. Financial pressures on the defense services, whose modernization has been retarded over the best part of a decade because of a financial crunch, received national attention. The dangerously anemic state of our intelligence and police services, though, barely gets a mention in the media or in public discussion. India's only security challenges aren't on the line of control, though. In addition to insurgencies like Kashmir or Chhattisgarh, there's the threat of violence by unemployed young people, which we just saw in Bihar, caste tensions, communal violence. Even on the streets of Delhi, as we saw the other day, when a woman was raped and assaulted in broad daylight, police seemed to be unable to keep anything like a semblance of order. The implosion of the Haryana police along caste lines in 2016, the failure of intelligence services and police to contain violence after the arrest of Ram Rahim Singh, the near collapse of the state across southern Kashmir in 2018, these are illustrations of what the whole of India might look like if policing and intelligence aren't properly fixed. For an understanding of the chronic anemia of India's police and intelligence services, two facts are key. The first is there aren't enough people to be doing the job, and the ones there are aren't trained or equipped to appropriate standards. The Bureau of Police Research and Development estimates that there are 192 officers sanctioned for every 100,000 members of our population. Because of budget constraints, though, India only has about 150 police officers per 100,000 people. That's well below the United Nations norm of 250. Telangana should have 218 police per 100,000 residents. It has 131. UP should have 185, it has 127. Bihar isn't even bothering to try, it just has 73, and that's because of financial problems. It's the same, sadly, in our states. In 2021, the Parliamentary Research Service said that states spend about 4.1% of their budgets on policing, which sounds kind of impressive if it weren't for the fact that almost all of that expenditure is on salaries and routine expenditures. Even in relatively well administered states, the scholars Renuka Sane and Neha Sinha have written, budgets as they stand barely allocate funds for operational expenses of running police stations or maintenance costs for computer systems, arms and ammunition. Training is just as much of a problem. The most recent figures available from the Bureau of Police Research for 2016-17 show only 0.03% of the police force received any form of in-service training that year. Total state and central government spending on modernization of facilities that Bureau of Police Research and Development report recorded stood at just some 7,300 crore or less than 7% of total expenditure. India's intelligence services also suffer from these deficits. Back in 2013, Parliament was told that the Intelligence Bureau suffers from a 30% shortage of personnel, most severely felt in mid-level executive positions. It's 9 years now, and senior officers say the situation hasn't really changed. RAW, our External Intelligence Service, also has similar problems. It's become increasingly dependent on Indian police service officers on short-term deputation to fill the gaps. But that means you don't have long mentoring for development of language skills or regional expertise. Even the IB, the Intelligence Bureau, which used to have a rock-solid cadre of officials who'd spent decades becoming familiar with problems, is short of experts with granular knowledge of regions and domains. As India develops real strategic interests not just in China but Central Asia, the Middle East, East Asia, these deficits are going to become more and more of a problem. Funding's been kind of generous for offensive covert operations. That's the bang-bang stuff you see in movies where spies target terrorists in neighboring countries or use gee-whiz technical stuff like satellite surveillance. But there's no real substitute for analytical skills and linguistic expertise. These areas are issues for which we need long-term capacity development and long-term funding. The segment of internal security that is well funded, interestingly, tend to touch directly on the life of VVIPs and our elites. Last year, 145 crores was allocated for capital expenditure in the Special Protection Group, which of course protects the Prime Minister, and 222 crore for the Delhi Police, which is catering to a VIP city. Elsewhere in the world, far less volatile polities have realized spending on internal security is an essential part of maintaining the social fabric. If there's low law and order, there's no investment, there's chaos. The United States, with a far smaller population than India, spends over $100 billion on policing. The budget of New York's police force for modernization alone outstrips that of India. China is reported to have been spending more on its internal security in recent years than on defense. True, neither India's central government nor the states can or ought, given pressing social needs, seek to match these enormous numbers. There is, however, a need for a clear roadmap for modernizing and developing the internal security system. In some cases, like training or regional skills, thoroughgoing reforms of personnel policy and recruitment are really badly needed too. Ever since the birth of the Indian nation, experts have been flagging these issues and no one's listened. The very first issue of the National Crime Survey in India, Crime in India, 1953, warned that, and I quote, India has the lowest number of policemen per 100,000 of population. In rural areas, that report went on, the police had ceased to exist as an effective force. Lack of funding, it pointed out, meant there had been no improvement in methods of investigation or the application of science. 1953. In 1954, this is what the National Crime Report had to say. All these handicaps continue to exist. Thus, we make the same suggestions we made the last year. You can cut and paste that report and nothing will have changed. But 1 year, we might just wake up to find out our ignoring this problem has cost this nation dearly. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint.